broadcast practice to check the streams. There it is.
Not to cross the streams. It's very different.
Huh?
Said not to cross the streams.
No, that's a different thing.
That's a different franchise.
Very different franchise. All right, so that's sounding a lot better today, or at least a lot higher volume. Well,
Did we have volume problems?
yeah, it just wasn't loud enough.
Oh, that's annoying.
We sure did. All right, I'm ready.
You're ready. Well, it's a good good, because we're streaming.
That's good. All right, well,
good to be
I
ready.
got my monitoring back now. So,
Good. Okay.
let me get up my notes and we'll get started. There they are. Ready.
Notes.
Welcome to the FRIGHTS stream, the FRIGHTS weekly stream. I'm Josh, and who are you?
Suddenly all the discussion about let's not present it to camera. It's a discussion between us. All that goes out the window as soon as the cameras turn on.
So.
I'm Simon.
Yes.
I'm also here in this room.
You need to look over there, though. I know it's a discussion, right? So let me. We'll come to this. We'll come to this in a second.
Turn to the camera and address the zero viewers.
No, but we need to be practicing this kind of thing for the future viewers. Otherwise, they won't come back.
If you say so.
I do.
I think they're here to feel like they're in the room with us.
That's true.
Which, our autistic asses don't make eye contact half the time anyway. So.
I know.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, I'll return to that point in a minute because it is kind of part of what happened this week. So we'll catch that. So welcome to the weekly FRIGHTS stream. Obviously, you can see we have some disagreements about if it's a discussion between just
everything.
us two.
Disagreements about everything.
Not everything.
Be prepared to watch the bickering of an old married couple.
Yeah. We're not going to go into the other thing. Yeah.
What's the other thing?
What Keynes calls us.
See,
Yeah.
yes. Well,
yes. One of the things that what we're going to cover today. I'm tired because we were at the Opera House last night.
Hi, tired. I'm Simon.
So we're covering a couple of things today. It's going to be a slightly different format. We've got 3 parts. We've got the kind of check-in that we do every week, which is what we've been doing with FRIGHTS. What music we've been making, how we've been progressing with the product, and why we're doing it, why we're doing these things, and how we felt about them. Mixed feelings this week.
Mixed.
Not in a bad way, but we'll get to that. Our little culture section, we're going to be talking about Justice's new album, Hyperdrama, which you put me onto, and that it's very good. It's very good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then we're going to be doing our kind of big discussion around the endless sleepover and what that actually means. Endless sleepover energy, as you wrote in the description there.
Yes.
I think it's thanks for coming and joining us. If you make sure you jump on the socials and follow us along as more stuff comes out. Music should be coming out this week or this coming week. We're going to have some music streams coming out. It might be just before the next weekly stream or just after the next weekly stream, but we're back on the FNL Friday Night Lights boat, which is going to have a different name at some point. We just haven't come up with one.
Yeah. We've got some options.
We do have some
What are the options?
I had Night Terrors.
Night Terrors is fun. I thought Friday Night Frights was good because then it's a riff on Friday Night Lights.
It's like going back on itself because it's my dyslexic ass that it was. We called this band FRIGHTS in the first place because I was trying to write Friday Night Lights very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it mushed.
And it just became one word. And then I was in love immediately.
No agonizing over band names here.
No.
Whatever poured out of the keyboard that morning was it. You're gonna get what you get, and you're gonna like it.
We want to have something that means something to us, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't fucking matter, does it?
Well,
there's an argument. Nah, I don't have any money. Don't have any money to put in this
optional swear jar.
Optional.
That's how these things work, right?
I'm good on the streams. You know that. I don't use any untoward language.
Mm-hmm.
Not any, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's our kind of intro. We'll get better at that. Let's talk about that really quickly.
To improve.
So, because this is kind of a metric. So there's been a couple of our friends kind of checking in every now and then.
Are you okay? Are you eating?
On the stream. I mean, they do that as well, but on the stream they've been checking in to see how we've been going. And I've been slowly introducing it to other friends as the weeks go on. It's not that many people, to be honest, at the moment. But they're people who have a...
He's got no friends.
I got no friends. Who have an insight into this kind of stuff or have an opinion on this sort of kind of stuff outside of us. Which, you know, between us, like when we work together, it's always valuable getting the backwards and forwards that we have. So I've been kind of expanding that backwards and forwards out to other people because I haven't rewatched one of these yet. I'm
Neither.
assuming you haven't either.
Why? They're garbage.
Yeah, they are. But they'll be better if we can review ourselves, and if we can't, then someone else will.
That's true.
And some of the points that were brought up by one of our friends, other than the audio point, which was, this is a work in progress. So figuring out how to do this with the current technology that we have is important, because we don't want to be spending ridiculous amounts of money on this now until, we can improve production later. Right. It's about getting...
So the audio in the last ones was no good, is that right?
Well, it wasn't that it was no good, it just wasn't loud enough. And my personal preference is to have softer audio over distorted audio, which is, what we had was quite low audio. In the first one, just like our lighting, everything was a bit low. And the second one, it got a bit better. And I think it's a bit better on this one.
Okay.
But we'll review after this week and find out.
Yeah. Well, we'll have 3 whole data points after this week.
Wow. That's big.
That's 3 times as many as we did on the first week.
Yeah, I mean, this is we're getting to kind of like habit territory right now.
Yay.
Oh my God, we've turned up 3 weeks in a row.
Twice as a coincidence, 3 times the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about it a lot too. Like, let's not forget that. Like, it has been in our minds. But we're also doing this along with work as well. So, this isn't our full-time gig yet, and it is tough to balance. But,
yeah.
Yeah,
time is a gobbler.
Yeah. So some of the notes that we got this week was the audio stuff, which we knew about, which we'd been working on. My friend Laura, she kind of watched the whole 2 streams.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Very committed.
And she's a content person, entrepreneurial person who makes stuff on the internet.
What did she say? Did she say you need to smile more?
No, she didn't say that actually, but I think last week we smiled a lot. I think we were all right last week in that respect. But she, particularly coming from a kind of coming into the stream and just hitting it. Yeah. Like, her thing was like, why do I want to listen to these 2 doofuses? Yeah. Another white boy with a podcast kind of energy.
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
And my crappy attempt to kind of introduce what we're doing was my kind of attempt at kind of dealing with that. I think we've talked about this week in reference to one of our clients about it's important to kind of present yourselves in the thing that you make and the thing that you're making. So, like, obviously I'm, Josh doing the thing that I'm doing, and you're Simon doing the thing that you're doing, and this is Matt the ghost who's not here yet. He hasn't passed over to the other side yet.
I kind of like this idea that we always talk about this third person.
That is never here. I was thinking about that as I was writing the notes up.
Yeah, like that time Jack Black started a gaming channel on YouTube, and just every week it was,
Duplicity
sorry
games.
guys, no games this week. Yeah. Haven't been playing games this week.
Then towards the end, when he stopped making them, he was playing games, which I thought was actually quite fucking funny. There was a lot of good. I loved that channel.
It was a good
While
channel.
it was active.
Jablinski Games.
Jablinski Games.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah. So Laura kind of raised this point, which I had thought about, which is like because we're doing intermissions, and because there's kind of these parts of the stream where people are kind of naturally going to join.
So we basically need to figure out compelling ways to elevate a pitch every time we come back from a point.
Come in. Yeah, basically like start, kind of leave, come back. That there needs to be kind of a flow of people understanding who the hell we are and what the hell we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just like, why are we here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But most people coming in are not going to be coming in at the start. Like it's
and that's why it's important to kind of come back to these things regularly. I my argument around this when I was talking to her about it was around like it's a long stream and we're actually doing this backwards because the funnels that lead to this.
Oh, we're totally doing it.
We're starting from the narrow end and moving the opposite way rather than that way.
Yeah.
And so the people out like
we couldn't make it easy for ourselves.
No.
We wouldn't want that.
Well, but our also concept behind this is that we're cutting out the smaller material from these larger content pieces.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to start from that end and produce the funnel backwards.
Well,
upside down
yes
pyramid.
and no. I don't think necessarily that's true. We don't have to. We could like contrive our way to that, like starting wide and then going narrow.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, like the chances of then going down some rabbit hole that don't serve our purposes in other ways is much higher. So the chances of us doing things like, suddenly we are in just content, we're on the content mill.
Yeah.
And we're not having these discussions that are
important
required.
for what we're doing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're necessary for us to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is the time where we're figuring stuff out. Like as I've said before, like the goal of this is not to present a show. The goal of doing it this way is to keep ourselves accountable. Like
Totally.
It's all quite selfish.
I think the other part of it is it's not just about being selfish and keeping ourselves accountable. I think it's also about demonstrating how much work actually goes into what a successful product, like music product, looks like. Like when we talk about some of these big artists like Beyonce or Post Malone or whoever, right? Those people haven't gotten to the level of artistry they are at by sitting around. They're on it like 100% of the time or more. And like it's as we're going to talk about, it's fucking hard to balance everyday life against what's effectively a multi-person kind of job. And you're competing in a huge pool of people who think they're
extremely competitive market. Yeah.
Exactly. And so if you are going to have a sustainable career that has a certain amount of success, whatever that means, but like you got to work a lot. And so the balance element is kind of hard, So
but I think getting to if I'm not misunderstanding.
So so what I was saying, bringing it back to the point, so my brain kind of loses the track. It's fuck.
Yeah, the unselfish part is that there's when you
get to see how music, it really is.
You only ever see the real the pointy end of the wedge.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. My brain.
I could see it.
Spongy.
Ooh, squishy. But it's so showing more of that wedge.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah, like we're not perfect and no one's perfect, and the people who present themselves as perfect, well, that's great that they can do that.
It's part of selling the product.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
It's aspirational. Effectively, like when you're consuming music as a listener, the same reason why you make choices about the clothes that you wear and whatever, like it's all about being this conspicuous consumption about fitting into a group.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean, we can see that this week with like the Met Gala that happens all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very good example of the people putting their best foot forward and the public only seeing the character rather than the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so part of doing these big content pieces is about seeing the work and how much work it takes, and the trials and tribulations of that, because it's not easy. Let's not pretend like it's a fucking walk in the park.
We're gonna have to get some soap opera shots in here.
Soap opera shots, of me
So I can see
crying.
the trials and tribulations. That's right.
Yeah, because
We'll get some real soft focus.
Yeah.
And then we can look to camera and go, oh, but why?
yeah, exactly. I do that enough. I'm sure it'll pop up
I'm sure.
at some point.
We can only hope.
And we can only hope.
Juice our numbers.
So that was my argument when we were talking about it. Was like this piece of the product is actually the piece of the product that is for the super fan, or the person who wants to really see what's going on.
Yeah.
And even though we haven't produced some of those shorter content pieces, the medium and short form content pieces, which are kind of the top of the funnel,
and let's not forget about the music.
Let's not forget about the music. Well, I mean, that's part of the content, really, and
it's all. We live in a time where it's all content, baby.
Well, yeah, exactly. But depending on what music we're talking about here, it's kind of higher up the funnel than this stuff is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean?
Yeah. And we are producing that, which is kind of, I want to talk about that as part of our kind of weekly check-in. So that was one of the points, was kind of bringing the audience in was one of the points. And I tend to agree with her on that point. Like, it is, for me, this is where we kind of disagree. The audience is part of the conversation to a degree. And at some point we will be kind of, when there is a bigger audience to engage with, we will be kind of talking to them in the comments.
Sure. Why do you think I disagree with you on that?
I don't know.
Where's that come from?
I thought you said you disagreed with me. You thought you said you wanted to make this a discussion.
In general.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm talking about specifically when we're having a discussion.
Yes.
Not like looking deliberately to camera. It's a very different different thing to say, like, we're going to interact with people, and obviously people are part of the discussion.
Totally.
Though that's going to become very interesting if we're producing music on stream and someone makes a suggestion and then we integrate that. Are they now a writer?
Yeah, well, that's a point to kind of contend with.
I feel like we need to modulate and moderate that a little bit, because, you can't do Nashville rules when there's like 1,000 people.
Don't give them ideas, okay?
Maybe you can. Maybe you can do Nashville for the Patreon subscribers. Yeah,
they're the people who, like down the track, that's how we're going to be engaging with the comments anyway, because otherwise there's too much going on.
Yeah. Put in your APRA details as part of your sign up.
Calm down. APRA or whatever rights organisation that you're signed with. So that was one of the points, and her main thing is just assuming people have no idea what we're doing, which why would
true.
They? So we're a band.
If we don't have any idea what we're doing, how can they?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that brings us back to the point of the pre-launch. Like, why we're here doing this right now in pre-launch is because we're trying to gain proficiency, which has been an ongoing discussion over the last couple of weeks. And
even after 3, or even after 2, in 3 now, this already feels easier.
Yeah. Though it took us it was frustrating getting to this point earlier today, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but for different, yes.
Actually, doing this and actually writing up the outline has been a lot easier. And I mean, for me, it's been great because it's been exercising some skills that I've just observed other people having spent, having spent 10 years in broadcast and journalism, and supporting those in journalists in operations.
Yeah, sure. The issue that I've got with it is that it's currently adding like an extra hour or more to write notes. Mm-hmm. And in this case, the thing that took time was cutting out excerpts from a couple podcasts. Yeah. And granted, that can be done faster.
That'll get easier though. I think that's the thing, right? Like we've talked about this with the music.
I still am very hesitant to add more time to something that is already very time consuming.
Totally. I mean, this is effectively taking us 3 hours at the moment, but I would expect, with our writing session that we're doing, formerly known as Friday Night Lights, on later this week, with Matt Tommy and a Pucho, who, what's their band name again? I've forgotten.
I don't know.
No, I've forgotten as well.
They've got a band?
They do have a band.
I had no idea.
I mean, Pucho's got her solo stuff, and Tommy's got his Pistol Black stuff, and together, they are something that I can't remember.
Okay.
Which is in there. It's just today.
Is it?
It is.
I doubt it.
It's just today. Very unprofessional of me. I apologise. So, the talk off the back of that writing session, it'll be a lot more spontaneous, and the preparation is like the making of the music.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I think with this one, as we're moving forward with our weekly discussion, we are going to be like a lot more on the ball. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it'll be a lot quicker.
Yeah, sure. I'm not trying to paint this picture of me like obsessing over it and being frustrated about it. I am saying that I'm hesitant about adding more time is all. I'm just surfacing a little idea.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, but I don't think any of these things are going to necessarily add time.
Apart from the time they have already added.
What do you mean? Like, what's added time?
Just the fact that we've, like we said, we spent like an extra hour on this.
Yeah.
And I feel like that time should be as close to zero as possible.
Totally.
I'm not criticizing it. Well, I mean, I am criticizing
You
it.
are.
That's exactly what I'm not dismissing it as something that's important.
Uh-huh.
But I just want to make sure that we're not losing the pressure to reduce it.
Do you think that maybe this thing, right? No, I don't think the pressure's going away. But do you think that today was kind of us still living in this weird procrastination territory like we talked about?
No.
Do you think it was us getting distracted and ADHD about what we were doing?
I don't think so. Because there were outcomes, and we stayed focused on what those goals were. I mean, there was probably a bit more faff. There was definitely some faffing around in the writing of the notes. You rewrote points a few times.
Yeah, and I moved stuff around just to structure it a bit better because we're trying this 3-part structure today.
Yeah, but I don't know that that's like that's not negative in any way. It's all useful. It all stayed on task and on goal. It was all moving towards a central place. It wasn't like you went on side quests.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it took time.
Yeah. So, I mean, that brings me to kind of another point that I wanted to talk about. My brain is so flat today, hey? That's what happens when you stay up to 12 o'clock.
We're not children anymore. We're not. We're not even in young adults anymore.
No, we're not.
Staying up till midnight.
So we're talking about like time, right? And like we've got a significant to-do list around, right? What we want to do around the products of like the Frights thing, the band, the music, the content, the culture jams, the whatever else that we're talking about doing, right? This grand plan that's sitting on a whiteboard over there. Like, how do you feel about the progress this week compared to, say, last week?
This week has it's progressed in different ways. Like, if you look at the to-do list and you're measuring it simply on, like, what have we checked off that box that we hadn't checked off last week, we haven't made much progress.
No.
But we have spent, like 3 afternoons
since last week. It's been like
together.
3 or 4 like 2 to 3 hour sessions in music making,
figuring out how to make stuff between us, which we realized pretty quickly into this process was a big gaping hole in the process.
Because like why do you think that is? Like, why do you think, like,
well, I know that I'm, because I personally on the me side of that equation.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
I'm going to give you feedback about the you side of that equation.
I'm ready. I'm waiting. I'm going to cry.
On the like, where's the soft focus shot?
Where's the box of tissues, you mean?
Oh gosh. I'm going to leave that one right alone. The the me side is that I'm not someone who has made music, nor have I ever had a desire to make music.
Yep.
In any real capacity, apart from like noodling around on pirated versions of Fruity Loops as a teenager.
Yep. You could be like K Tronada. You could be the next K Tronada.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or any of the other people who use FL,
yeah.
which is disconcertingly large.
Yes.
And there's just lots of there's lots of process stuff at every level where I'm just so unfamiliar with it that I don't know when to push, when to shut up, when to like say hurry up, when to say this isn't important. I don't know where any of that stuff lies, and I'm just out in this great wide ocean of possibility, completely at sea.
Yeah.
And like I'm comfortable with that, but it's also not conducive to making stuff in any kind of effective way.
Yeah. Because one of your big things about the way that music is made from your perspective is that it takes too fucking long.
It's so slow.
Yeah.
It is so slow. When it's
where does that perspective come from for you? Sorry to jump in there.
Where it comes, well, because I think the reason that it's and hang on, let's come at this a different angle.
Go.
Just for context, how if you're going to make a 3.5 minute pop song,
yes,
right, a studio produced thing from start to finish, how many hours would you need to do that?
Like, fucking heaps.
Give me a number.
Oh, like a pop song?
Yeah. We're talking about
it's like
conception, writing, playing, all the
like if I was
going to
quote a client on this, it would be like weeks of studio time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Give me a number.
3 weeks.
So 3 weeks at
2 weeks
at 32 hours a week or something like that.
Yeah.
So we're talking about somewhere between 100 and 120 hours.
Yeah.
Of human time.
Yeah.
And that's not including the band's human time.
Yeah.
That's we're talking about engineers, professional staff.
Yeah. If it's like a highly produced kind of pop track. You know?
Yeah. So in terms of human effort, we're talking about somewhere. If we're talking about like a 4-piece band or something like that that are expected to be there the whole time, we're suddenly talking about something like 500 human hours to make a 3-minute song, right?
Yeah.
Now, that obviously feels crazy to me.
Yes.
Because, and so in my head, the experience of listening to a song is just that
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's whether you're out at a live gig, someone's playing it around a campfire, you're listening to it on a streaming service. There is like you are not.
That's only if you listen to it once.
To any of those. But I'm talking about the making of a thing, right? Like for every other temporal art form. So we're talking about like
film,
dance. Film's a good one. But I'm talking about like creation of things specifically. So I'm thinking more like pottery or like turning something on a lathe. As you're doing the thing, it's happening in front of you. And with music, that in my head fits into that box. There is a person and they are doing a thing and the thing comes out the other side. And it, like, there is not a huge emotional barometer that you have to bring to music in a way that's different to other art forms. Like if you're painting a picture or you're making a piece of digital art or whatever, pardon me.
Get it out.
You're looking at the thing you're making. You've got the mass of things that you're responding to that you've identified, whether that's studies, sketches, work that you're referencing, whatever. And you're using those two things to synthesize the third thing, right? You're going, what's out there in the world? What have I created? How does that stuff feel together in the mix? And how does that compare to the thing that I am currently rendering in front of me?
Yep.
And that's kind of the whole equation.
Yeah.
And like I'm very good at doing that particular equation because that's what I've done professionally for like 15 years. But in music, it feels like suddenly there's though that large big picture thing suddenly stops existing for like 99% of the process, and it's all this granular fine detail. Is that snare snappy enough? And we're going to spend 3 hours on that.
Yeah.
Is that synth is not distorted enough? Is too distorted? Is any number of things.
To be fair, I agree with this particular part of the point, and in fact, I agree with the whole thing because I tend to I feel like this the length of time some of these productions take are the thing that takes away from the productions. You kind of get like lost in the weeds kind of thing, and you forget the reason you're there, which is why we've kind of been working on processes around that in our own practices, and why we've been working together, because you're coming at it from this like you say, temporal design kind of angle, whereas I came up in this not classical, but like this music kind of way of doing things, which is all about magic and vibe and all that kind of spiritual stuff, which isn't bad or anything like that. It's just you get lost easy because there's nothing you can touch or grasp.
Yeah,
you know. And so these new perspectives that we've been talking about around cultural relevance and advancing the cultural conversation have been really helpful in making decisions while writing, even when the weeds are like when you're kind of traversing the edge of the weeds, you know, and hoping you're not going to fall into the ditch kind of vibe, you know. That's where I come from at that particular point. So do you feel like our progress this week between me and you working together has been good, effective?
Yeah, I think it has been
growth.
I think it's been growthy and positive and effective. Yeah, it is, again, like it's a highly time consuming thing. And it's going to be because we're building proficiency, and we're building it in a real ad hoc way. We don't have a structured way to do it.
No,
because we've never done it before.
Yeah.
You know, if we do this again, if we're then go on to teach other people how to do it, we do it with a different set of friends, whatever, then we're going to be able to bring some structure to it. But as it stands currently, like whenever we're trying stuff.
Yeah.
It's purely experimental. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, I think that we've made progress for sure. In lots of different weird little ways.
What do you think has worked this week in the practice?
I don't think that anything has not worked. So we've it's kind of almost if you look at like the scientific process, for example, there's when something doesn't work, it's still a data point.
Yeah.
And
like the first
getting the
session
data
we did
points
was
are
shocking.
Yeah, it was garbage.
Yeah.
But we could point to all the things about it that were garbage.
Wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so that's all great.
Yeah. Oh, and I feel like we came off the back of that first session, like we were a bit down, but we just got on with the day, really, or at least I was a bit down. Not going to speak for you.
I was fine. Unperturbed.
Yeah, unperturbed. Yeah, you're the stoic.
Staying in my lane.
The stoic of all.
Moisturized.
Of all time. The best stoic. Like for me, because it is kind of, music is very close to my, like, I guess, the way I see myself. What's that called? Like,
ego.
I guess it's got some ego, but like my identity, that's what I was looking for.
Self-value.
Yeah, like my ability to produce music is kind of really important to me on an emotional level. So I walk away from these things certainly feeling a bit weird when things haven't quite come off. But I guess like it's not that we didn't, or at least it's not that nothing came out of that first session, even from a musical perspective. It just was not kind of what we were looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in terms of big takeaways,
Yeah.
because there's a thousand little takeaways, and we'd be here for the whole week if we were going to go through every one of them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in terms of the big takeaways, I was in what we'd been trying to do, which was effectively like figuring out how to do a good cover of different songs. We tried a bunch of different songs.
Yep.
In different genres, different amounts of movement in them, different amounts of rhythm and melody and that balance and playing with that, and different vocal styles and all this sort of stuff. What stuck out to me was that there's a real streak of wanting to change lots of things, which I want to encourage, because I think that on the whole is a good thing.
Yeah.
That you seem to have this innate want to touch every part of it and want to push it in some direction. And I think that's a really great impulse. And when you listen to really incredible covers, like a Jose Gonzalez covers of the Knife and Kylie Minogue that he's done, fantastic covers where every part of those songs have been changed.
Yeah.
I love a cover that does that. So that was very encouraging to me. The other thing that poured out of it was there were points where you started to change so much about it that suddenly it was
A different song.
it was the basis for a totally different song. And
Which
I
I
could start
liked. I loved
feeling the little... It stopped pulling to like, I'm a cover and I'm being pulled in this direction. And it became... It suddenly snapped away from that and was like, oh, this is a new thread. And it started... Instead of pulling away from that, it started pushing toward wanting to be something new.
But I think that's kind of part of the process that we've been practicing anyway.
Yeah,
you know,
and it's a beautiful outcome.
Yeah,
like the songs, the little bases for songs that I was hearing coming out the back of that, were fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had a lot of fun doing it to that point too. It was kind of like, for me, kind of taking it past that point and then coming back.
Yeah.
Kind of helped me detach from the original version, because that's always a struggle for me. Like a lot of these songs are quite iconic songs, not a lot of them, but they have a vibe about them.
All right.
Well, I mean, it depends. Like some of them I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
You know, they came from your
obscure, silly,
obscure kind of musical
eclectic
taste, which is fine because, you know, I have equally crazy musical taste when it comes to the experimental side of music, whereas you've got the same thing but for popular kind of music. And so, like I think for me, one of the things that made it easier to kind of come back and go, this is actually how I want to perform this cover, that was really useful.
Yeah,
because
finding the line.
You kind of do all the fancy shit, and then you come back and you're like, actually, I've seen what there is to see, and this is what works for the way that I want to do it.
In the design world, we'd call that a double diamond.
A double diamond.
Double diamond.
I'm learning new things every... Why is that a double diamond?
Well, so this idea of in a typical thing, it would be like we've identified the problem, and then we do like a brainstorm, and then we bring it in. So that's the first diamond.
Yep.
So you go brainstorm, refine.
Yep.
And then you go possible solutions, refine. So it's this double refinement thing. So in this case, we're going, here's the original song.
Yep.
What are all the melodic and rhythmic possibilities for it?
Yep.
What actually
is cool?
What are we keeping?
What's
and then we make the actual thing, and then we trim all the shit out of it.
Yeah, like
so you've done the same process effectively. That's a massive simplification of.
Well, let's
of
talk about it in
but
actual practice. Like what was the one we did yesterday? That was a Hot Chip song.
Yeah, one life stand.
One life stand. Which I kept saying one night stand when I was singing it because for whatever reason.
Well, because that's what the play on words is.
It is.
Yeah.
The Hot Chip song it doesn't have much harmonic content. It's like it's kind of it's like nostalgic kind of house like dance music that you listen to in your lounge room.
That's right. It's club music as played by an indie band.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. That you don't listen to in the club, you listen to it at home.
Yeah.
Remembering the times you used to go to the clubs.
That's right.
Yeah. And so for me, that was quite challenging because as you say, I like to touch everything, and it didn't really have. For me, it didn't feel like it had anything to work with, you know, because one of the things with my piano playing, or playing and singing at the same time, the more rhythmically complex it is, the harder it is for me to sing and play.
Yeah.
I haven't completely detached those things at the moment.
And now that I know that's a challenge for you,
yeah, we're going to be doing it all the fucking time.
You know what's coming.
Yeah. Which is fine. It's something that I've always kind of kept working towards, but as we've spoken about previously, I haven't touched music for 2 years, so coming back to it has been challenging. Good challenging, but like hard. And the intent, like that Hot Chip song has a lot of intense rhythmic stuff, and for a cover where I was able to play and sing that rhythmic stuff at the same time, it would probably have worked. But in the context of where I was at practice-wise at the time, it wasn't working. Mm-hmm. So if effectively ending up at a point where I had to invent harmonic content to make it work, or get the rhythmic content in a different ways, which are where I think we ended up with it. So there was like a fast bit and then a slow bit. And
yeah. Well, I mean, you ended up completely changing everything about it, right?
I wrote new harmonic content for it.
You started delivering but also new rhythmic stuff. It got really interesting when you started doing the lyrics in double time.
Yeah, I thought that was fun. I was surprised that I could sing it that fast, to be honest.
But it was great, and that was exactly the point where it snapped over and was like, I'm no longer a re-envisioning of this song, and it was like all the other when you were deconstructing the part, like the notes within the chord and whatever, all these other influences, other songs that use that same progression and things jumped out, and then suddenly it became synthesis.
Yeah.
Immediately it became synthesis because it was wearing its lineage on its sleeve, in this new way. Yeah. And there was a reference back to the Hot Chip stuff, but it was like 3, 4, 5% of the DNA of the track at that point.
Yeah, there was not much there except for the lyrics and some of the harmonic content.
But it was nothing, right? Yeah. And when you say the lyrics, like they were only the lyrics because that's what you happened to be singing. Like the rhythm in which they were being sung
was different.
Had all changed.
Yeah.
And changing over those lyrics into something different, but would have happily existed as a new song without anyone being able to trace that back.
And the thing,
apart from a fleeting reference.
Yeah. The thing, like I said, that I find very difficult about this kind of practice, this covers practice, is that I'm so attached to the original songs usually that it's so hard to uncompose them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like deconstruct them, like that Julia Jacqueline song that we've been talking about. It's so kind of set in my mind as this kind of perfect piece of composition and songwriting,
because someone's worked on it for like 500 hours.
Yeah.
and
it's been covered so many times by so many other amazing artists.
Yeah.
That you kind of like, you just want to play it like them and not really reinterpret it because it's just so attractive already. It's like, you don't need to redress something that's already fucking amazing,
Yeah.
And that's certainly arguments that my partner has around the idea,
of doing covers in general.
Doing covers in general.
Yeah.
She's like, I really like the original. Why? Don't show me that. I don't want to hear it. Like that Drake song, the Passion Fruit one that Benny Sings did a version of,
and Angus and Julia Stone.
Yeah. That Benny Sings version is the first time I ever heard that song. So for me,
that's the canonical version.
That's the canonical version. And I'm a big Benny Sings fan, and I'm not such a big Drake fan. Though I do like the original now that I've heard it.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah, I mean, you would, but it's a different...
Especially after the dude's gone and made a fool of himself on the internet over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I haven't paid attention. Haven't paid attention.
The time I've got for Drake has diminished.
Yeah, fair. I still like the song, though. I do like the song. But... So that's the challenge for me in this covers idea is very much putting aside the beauty of the original version and then kind of trying to make a new perspective or taking a new snapshot of that from a different angle, you know. So that's certainly been a challenge, and I think this double diamond thing that you've just kind of described is how it's kind of happened. That process of figuring out, like pulling apart the song, kind of putting it back together, throwing away the bits we hate, and then kind of coming back and reinventing it the way that you described it better. You know, it definitely works. For me, I think one of the great things about doing songs that I don't know has been I just look at the lead sheet and look at the lyrics and just kind of feel it out a bit with a bit of reference from the original track.
Which is, perfectly valid way to go about it.
Yeah, it'd be cool just to kind of go back, like as we get further into this, like I'd love to just do it without listening to the original and just kind of write the song. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Like, and not get caught in the weeds, because I mean, there's people who do this on YouTube and stuff already, where they just kind of imagine what it would sound like.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
I'm pretty sure there's channels now for just about any instrument you can imagine of like this great performer on this instrument. Here's XYZ iconic song for the first time.
Yeah.
They've certainly weaseled their way into my YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and
they're pretty great.
Harp Girl.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't like to be called Harp Girl,
Harp
but
Girl.
I can't remember her name. She does these things where she kind of writes stuff for computer games without hearing the original score.
Yeah.
It's that kind
That's a
of
great
thing.
segment. Yeah.
You know, which I think is quite compelling, because it's like, how close do you get to it? You know what I mean? Like, and that kind of suggests either there's kind of that impression, cultural impression in their mind, or the lyrics are influencing decisions or whatever, around that.
Well, it's part of the alchemy of music, right? Is that there's this kind of there's something in the ether when people play music. It's between people, and they jump into each other's vibe. But my perspective on that is that goes beyond music, right? That is part of the human experience in everything that you're experiencing, the room that you're in, the lighting that you're under, the art on the walls, all these decisions are all woven into this fabric of reference and cultural understanding. So it completely goes beyond all that. Anyway.
Yeah. So that was the big kind of thing this week. The balance stuff is hard and will continue to be hard, and the music stuff has been great, and there's been some growth there. And we've both felt pretty good about it. I've been up and down like I always am, but I think that's just part of it for me. That's just who I am. I've written down some goals for this week. I don't know if you've read those yet.
No.
Nope. That's fine. I'm going to read them out. So we've already alluded to one of these goals. Obviously, we're going to come back here and do another stream next week, and it'll be more refined. And as we're hoping that Matt will be returning this week, so it'll mean that we'll be able to kind of introduce him and start working towards a launch date and finish the production. I will say that one more thing as part of our kind of weekly check-in. Where's the music? Like, we're meant to be a band. Where's the music? Okay, so I want to answer that question. So there's a lot of music in the works. As Simon said, like, one of our biggest problems currently is fighting with the timelines around the production process and fitting that into our already hectic lives, right? And we want this, particularly the original stuff, the stuff we're releasing as FRIGHTS, original tracks. There's still a lot of emotional stuff caught up in making those amazing in our own eyes. And we're kind of challenging ourselves with the idea that it's that we need to be quicker at this, and therefore there needs to be a certain amount of what Kenny Beats would say, not overthinking it. Don't overthink shit. And maybe with what we're doing here, we might be overthinking it a bit. I don't think we are, but I think with the way that we're producing the tracks at the moment, there's certainly a certain amount of reproduction that has been happening on them that we're going to be removing as we improve our own processes. So there is music coming. There's roughly 5 tracks under production at the moment, and roughly kind of 20 tracks that are written, right, that need producing. And as our kind of writing sessions start back up, that number will increase, and you'll start to get to see stuff from the beginning of the process through the production process. We don't know exactly how we're going to capture any of the production process at the moment, because it doesn't just happen in one place, it happens in all these little places. So there's something to think about there. But at the moment, we're kind of thinking of this F&L thing, and then we've got, the end product, and the bit in between there, we don't know. This is kind of meant to cover a bit of that. But actually seeing what happens in the studio is a different thing. Obviously, we've just been talking about producing covers, and one of the kind of products that we're trying to produce is a kind of weekly, fortnightly piece of music that comes out that's either a cover or a culture jam or a remix. The remixes are kind of part of the release strategy for each of our original songs, and therefore the original songs need to be mixed and ready to go before they can be produced. The culture jam has just been a conversation at the moment, but
we haven't done any.
We've talked about them. We kind of have done them, but we haven't, there haven't been much.
Yeah, we've done them in weird capacities.
Impulsive ways.
It's never been like a considered thing, consolidated,
which is what we want,
thing with an actual reason to do it.
Yeah.
They've just been fun
things,
opportunistic.
Well, one of our writing sessions was or maybe even a couple of our writing sessions kind of used those ideas. I would consider them to be culture jams based on the conversations that we've had. But that's kind of it's a product that's a bit down on our to-do list, because we need to kind of ramp up to it.
Well, yeah, and just having that basic proficiency.
Yeah, because we need to be able to do it quickly.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's part of.
I think we underwrite this. We've got basic proficiency. It's just we're trying to build our proficiency to a point we can execute at the speed that we want to execute at.
Yeah. You've got basic proficiency. I do not.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. Sorry, I thought you were going the other way with it. That's why I flipped.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm the best.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so the music is coming.
You should see me shred on the guitar.
And hopefully we'll have some music in our F&L stream that we're going to.
Well, we definitely will have some music. There's going to be something.
There's going to be something, yeah. Yeah, it'd be good.
It might be garbage.
No, I don't think so. With the team that we got, I think we'll be good.
Yeah, but we've got to build up the drama. Watch us crash and burn on Friday night. Or is it Saturday?
Saturday. This is why we're changing the name.
Well, there you go.
Ghost Coast. That is Apucho and Tommy.
Ghost Coast.
Ghost Coast.
Well,
that is their duo.
Thematically relevant.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
Wow.
Frights featuring Ghost Coast.
It's all coming together.
I didn't think of that when Tommy really pushed for that particular angle. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
What particular angle?
Well, I said that they should put their individual kind of artist names on it. They're like, no, we're doing Ghost Coast. I'm like, okay. And now I take back my...
Cool.
Yeah.
Do they have any music out?
I think they're just about to release something.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So...
Yep. So FNL is back. So that's one of the big kind of things this week. Yay!
Hey.
It's been off for a while, since November.
Oof, that is a little while.
Yeah, I mean, it was like 6 months ago at this point.
That's a big season break.
Big season break.
What season are we up to now? Is this season 4?
This is 3.
This is season 3.
Yeah. We've only done one in season 3 so far.
Okay, so real big mid-season break without being in the middle of the season.
Hiatus, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Hiatus.
Hiatus.
Yeah, the network. We had network issues.
Yeah, there was a writer's strike.
The network wanted to cancel us, but we wouldn't let them.
And we fought on it.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's back this week. So we'll have an FNL and
Keep
a week
changing the time slot
and a discussion around what we did in FNL, because we think that's part of the importance of the segment. Obviously, we're going to be continuing to work on our creative practice around the covers, and in some form, I'd like to have this as a goal. We had this as last week's goal, and we didn't fucking get there.
Whoops.
Well, it wasn't whoops. We just didn't get there. We didn't
there.
feel like it was good enough. I didn't think it was good enough.
What's the goal? You haven't actually.
To just put out a cover. Like, I don't know if we'll put out a stream of us putting it together because I don't think the proficiency's there yet, and it's boring. It's very, very.
It's boring so far. It won't always be.
It won't always be
I
boring.
can see a path to it not being boring.
Totally. But speed is a huge component in that. I hope you can hear the rain because it's raining here right now. And then just continuing to improve the practices around the content and us moving forward and balancing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which we're doing, I feel like.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. And
so, goal number 1, don't be shit.
it's just really the only goal.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got that one down.
I don't think it's don't be shit. I think it's be less shit.
Be less. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's a better goal. Before we...
It's more achievable.
Huh?
It's more achievable. You can make tiny little progress and be less shit.
Yeah.
You need a lot more progress to not be shit.
That's life, baby. The whole thing.
The whole thing.
It's just every day.
Struggle.
Be a bit less shit.
Get up, brush teeth, be less shit.
Go poo.
Not necessarily in that
Have
order.
less shit.
Well, as a percentage of your body mass, you are now less shit.
Yep. Goal achieved.
Wow.
Yeah, we went down the toilet pretty quickly.
Oh, that was...
We're Australian, leave us alone.
Oh my God. What does that have to do with anything?
We're rude.
Oh, is that what it is, cunt?
Now we're going to have to put... that's a forbidden swear word on the stream.
Oh, is it? Whoops.
I don't know.
Sorry.
I don't know if it is or not.
Sorry.
But anyway, whatever. It's surprising that you were the first one to say that
it was
word
gonna,
and not
look, it was
me.
going to happen eventually. I felt like I had to just tear the Band-Aid off.
That's true. All right. Is there anything else you want to kind of like talk about before we head off to our first little break?
No, let's do it. Let's intermish.
All right. Let's intermish then.
All right.
I'll let you do the intermishing. I will see you in a second, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the first third of our stream. Come back in 5 minutes and we'll continue talking about frights. Sorry, I was hiding.
I don't care.
Welcome back to our weekly Frights stream, where we talk about the progress of the music we've been making for Frights, the band, which is me, Josh, and Simon.
Hello.
Over there. Well, so we've just come in from our first third, talking about our progress this week with music making, the processes that we've been kind of engaging in around not just the music making but the whole product, which is the band Frights, and our cultural relevance and all that jazz. In this middle section, what we're going to be talking about is an industry and culture thing, which I'll let you lead us on, but it's around justice.
Justice, freedom, and liberty for all. No, Justice the band, the French electronic-y dance duo-ish.
Yes, duo-ish.
Well, I mean, it's not that they're a duo. They are definitely a duo.
They're definitely a duo.
Electronic-ish, dance-ish,
House-ish.
house-ish.
Yeah.
They make music.
Yeah.
that we can agree on.
It's good music too.
It is good music. It's it's abrasive though. Like as if you're someone who is not immersed in that world at least a little bit, Justice is going to be hard to listen to.
You reckon?
I reckon if you're not someone who is who has that bit of context, you're going to hear lots of distorted synths. They're going to be sitting over the top of each other.
Yeah, they're going to sound a bit shit.
It's going to be harsh.
Yeah.
It's going to be harsh.
I mean, for me, I guess, like full honesty, that I'm not really kind of engaged with Justice before this record, because I don't know, I probably heard their stuff before, but they weren't in my kind of regularly listened to material. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of experimental stuff. You know, I did experimental music at uni, and that was my whole degree. And you know, it's definitely got a lot of those elements that we talked about.
But it also does come from a different perspective, where those experimental features are going to be more like culturally intrinsic. In Australia.
Yes.
Australia.
Yeah.
There's like, what exposure to European experimental music do we have?
French people coming to Australia on holiday.
Yeah, I suppose. There's not really...
Don't know why French people would come to Australia on a holiday, but anyway.
And yeah, you don't come across them all that often.
No.
But if you're someone who is living in Paris or something, you're going to have much more exposure to being able to go to like a jazz bar, to be able to go to like to casually come into contact with music that is less interested in like a pop formula. Yeah,
it's definitely not pop formula kind of territory.
Yeah,
and it's definitely not house formula kind of territory, because it changes, which is not something I'm used to with kind of club music. It's not. I wouldn't even call it club music.
No. It's kind of the opposite of the Hot Chip where we were saying that Hot Chip is a band for like the harkens back to your club house days.
Yes.
R.I.P. the Glass House Tavern.
It's not gone. You can still get stabbed there whenever you want.
It's just changed its name.
Yeah.
But where Hot Chip was that reframed into an indie context, it's kind of the opposite. It's like it's got all this change in interest and variability that happens to be wearing the clothes of house music. And even then, you know, a very jaunty version of those clothes. But yeah, anyway, album number 4. Fantastic album, Hyperdrama.
Studio album number 4.
Yeah, okay. Fair. The cultural impact of Justice, I think, in general, has been pretty big. Like they definitely sit within that same pantheon of French electronic bands, of, you know, your Daft Punk, Cassius, Air, there's this real bubble.
You can hear it. You can hear it in the music.
That they're definitely part of.
Yeah.
There are some Justice tracks or sections of Justice tracks where you could be forgiven for thinking it was a Daft Punk track. Like they can be.
It lasts about 2 seconds,
very
mind
close.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mon Dieu.
Is that what I said? Mon Dieu.
It was a
French joke.
It was a homonym or a homophone rather, for a French word.
Very good.
Very good. Well done.
You
made a pun without realizing it.
You're a champion.
Well,
yeah.
I'm something.
Yeah, so I definitely picked up on that. Like, look at that rain go. You can hear it. I definitely, I mean, from my exposure to French house music and that cultural space, it kind of made it very easy to help me get into it. But also my exposure to kind of experimental 20th century avant-garde was certainly a component in that, because some of these songs change so quickly and in such unusual ways that like unexpected ways, I think is probably a better word, that it's sometimes hard to grasp them, from a new listener perspective. I wouldn't, like, there are certainly more poppier ones and certainly more kind of loop-driven tunes on the record that kind of drag you in a bit like that. But certainly it is for a dry listen, it would be really difficult if I didn't have that cultural kind of cultural touchstones already in my
which is a great way to listen to music, right? Like when we push ourselves into new territories in terms of genre or like instrumentation and these areas where we don't have those contexts, it's such at least for me, I always find it a really refreshing way to listen, to go, oh, my palate has been cleansed, because I've been able to detach what I would normally have as these constantly reinforced cultural references.
Yeah.
To have those not be on the plate and have a new set of things come in that you then have to connect the dots and go, where in the map does this fit? Where are they thinking of these connections? Where am I thinking of these connections? And watching those little threads emerge for me is like an integral part of how I listen to music. So it's part of what's interesting.
And I would agree. The same thing for me is, like, I mean, it's kind of part of the puzzle is where's this fit into the puzzle from my perspective. Because my perspective and your perspective are going to be different. Our threads and where they kind of connect with other parts of culture are going to be very different. Well, not necessarily. Some of them are stronger threads. I mean, if you think of it like a brain, it probably is very similar to kind of the way that the neurons join together.
It's exactly that. Yeah.
But like, for you, what like, other than what you just mentioned around the house stuff, like, what are the other cultural references that you heard?
Well, I think things like the choices to feature certain people.
Yeah.
The fact that we've got Tame Impala and Thundercat bookending the album.
Yep. And Tame Impala in the middle there as well.
That's right, yeah. Well, that was interesting.
And I think he played drums on some of the tracks.
You reckon?
Yeah. I mean, I said that to you the other day.
That you reckon the drum sample?
Well, no, like either they sampled like him doing the work that he did on the other tracks that he's on, or that they're on, depending on how you see it. Because I just think of Tame Impala as Kevin Parker, so I think that he drummed, or at least was sampled his drumming, because it just, like, he's got such a distinctive drum sound that it just was like, when they're not using electronic drums in a couple of the songs, it sounds like Kevin Parker's drums, even though it may not be credited. Yeah.
But to me, I feel like the reason I bring them up is like they have a similar sonic palette in my mind, and in fact they've collaborated together. That
surprised me actually, like how close it was to Tame Impala in the sonic palette. That psycho.
There's a lot of throwback to this 70s psychedelia. Like, we're gonna fuzz out a lot of stuff, and it was. Those sort of things, I think, by the choices that they're making about who they collaborate with, there's a really interesting contrasts that get introduced. So you get, it suddenly throws into light the stuff that is the same and the stuff that is different. and so the fact that there were a lot of names on there as featured acts that I didn't recognize. I haven't heard any of their music before, so there was a real mix of like, where does this sit in the way that music criticism happens, right? Like when you hear someone or you see someone's name that you don't recognize, you contextualize them in using a wide scope.
Yep.
You know, you put them, you search for references everywhere. And then of course, once you know what someone sounds like, you stop doing, your scope narrows, and you suddenly look for them in relation to themselves and their immediate people around them. And so to be able to have both of that on an album is really nice and refreshing. You know, that happens all the time on like Gorillaz albums. And it's in this album, I feel like that was used really well. Like if you think of it as a technique of featuring people of different levels of fame, of different levels of cultural impact. So that was something that was that jumped out at me as something that would that was like an interesting cultural connection perspective. Yeah. I mean, with other stuff, it's hard because I've known Justice for so long that they just kind of they sit so closely tied to those basically other French bands.
Yeah.
I think you can hear that they've listened to lots of older French music too. But I think they've kept that like thread of national heritage in their music really tightly. Yeah. Generally speaking. Yeah.
Well, I think just a lot of that kind of French house stuff, it just has a sound to it.
But part of what makes that sound is that they draw from other genres so heavily. They draw from funk and rock. And
it's a cultural, it's a local cultural thing. It's like terroir, as they would like to call it. Yeah.
It's exactly that.
Terroir.
It's terroir.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's the only way to explain it.
Provenance.
Yeah. They're using different instruments and different techniques, and maybe some of the same techniques as, say, like a Daft Punk or an Air would use. But there's just this. It's the same thing that I would kind of like put against an artist who has a really unique kind of personal sound, like Kevin Parker or Tame Impala. You know, it's you know when it's him. Just like you know when it's Thundercat, you know it's him because he plays bass in a certain way, he sings in a certain way. It just has a thing.
Yeah, it's got a particular like timbre to it.
Yeah, yeah. It's not. I don't think you can just kind of funnel it down to one word. That's why it's so hard to talk about.
Did you even say je ne sais quoi?
Yeah, yeah. Lots of French words. Yeah, well, lots of French words that don't necessarily have direct English translations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found that component very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So what the big reason I want to talk about it though, in relation to just bring it back to what we're doing, is so Justice's debut album is something that this album converses more readily with their debut album than their previous albums have. Yeah. And so there's this kind of feeling of almost like a return to home or like coming full circle that's happened with this album, which means that this has been a really great opportunity, this album coming out, to revisit and listen to those older albums, and particularly the debut. And in thinking about what it means to like make a debut album, to be producing music with fresh eyes and thinking about this sort of stuff for the first time, what jumped out at me was the naivety that they were bringing into that album, and that serious freshness that they managed to capture. So and that we're in that position now ourselves.
Yeah.
Is, you know, we've I mean, you've got your name all over tracks everywhere. But in terms of actually putting your flag in the ground and going, this is the music that I am making in a very direct way.
Yeah.
This is like, you've only done that a handful of times, really.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say that my name's on that stuff because it was all pseudonym kind of based.
Was it? Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
And yeah,
I didn't know that about
weird.
you.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that came from a place of not feeling like it was worth listening to or whatever, but we can get into that another time.
Worthlessness. Tune in next week for discussions about worthlessness.
Which I'm sure a lot of artists can
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah. Anyway.
So anyway, so I'm looking at the thing that I've been thinking about in relation to this.
Yes.
Is, you know, personally,
yeah,
I feel like my idiocy, or naivety, if you want to use a slightly less harsh word, is an asset. I feel like I can come in and ask the stupid questions, be the dumbest person in the room, and I'm comfortable in that role. And I feel like it more often than not, it opens up opportunities to have questions asked that might just be foregone conclusions otherwise.
Yeah. And
I love that about entering new creative spaces. So it's something that I fully have been embracing in this new venture.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I've found interesting about our engagements in the last week within music. Because there's things I wouldn't have done had it not been for your
stupidity.
Yeah.
Outright, bald-faced idiocy.
Yeah, I think you undersell yourself. But anyway.
Well, it's because of the...
ignorance, I think is...
Well, ignorance is probably the right word, or naivety, or whatever. But you know, I'm aware that I'm in a very privileged position to have come from this other, to come from other creative backgrounds, and to also happen to be a big music nerd.
Do you want to talk about how there's a connection between the way that you are artistically and where Justice is?
Yeah, well, as it turns out, the two members of Justice were both graphic designers before they were musicians.
And what were you?
I was maybe a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Ish. I mean, there are so many sub-disciplines within graphic design. Yeah. I tend to... I'm going to sound like such a wanker saying this, but see, I'm going to give some context here.
Okay.
For a long time, before graphic design was a formalized practice, in like the 50s, 60s, there were so many other words that kind of meant graphic designer: typesetter, title designer, illustrator.
That was what I was trying to think of as typesetter.
And then there was industrial artists, commercial artists. There were so many different words for that had then suddenly snapped together to become graphic design as a discipline. And that DNA of not really knowing what to be called is still part of graphic design. So many people will say graphic design is the worst possible name for this thing that we do. It's actually visual communication, or it's whatever. And they're right to say that. And so you get this real fragmentation of the way of what people call themselves, to the point where on LinkedIn for a long time, my title was just professional human.
Mine's insert label.
Well, there you go. But the point is, right, the way that I focused on design was very much about emotional response. That's all it was. And so when you think about, well, what does it mean to be a visual communicator? You're communicating sentiment, you're communicating feeling and vibe through the visual choices that you make when you're constructing a piece of communication, whether that's a poster, whether it's an ad, whether it's whatever. And that like sensitivity around, I'm going to make these are our communication goals, These are how we want people to feel. This is the overall context that these people exist in, and so we're going to use that as a thread to make them feel this way. Is something that a lot of graphic designers don't do. Like, it might be 10% of graphic designers give that any thought whatsoever, and 5% of them are proficient at it, and way less than 1% are very proficient at it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, do I call myself an emotional designer? Do I call myself a sentiment creator? I don't know. You know, so I just thought of it as being human, because it was a real human-centered design thing to do, to not be thinking about trends, to not be thinking about whatever. It's about hitting the goal. It's very goal-centered and always about the human first.
Yeah. And like, when it comes to, like, from what you're saying there, and the way that I think about music as being this kind of purest expression of human emotion, like it's the language of the heart, as people say. Like,
yeah. Well, it's also there's that quote by that the guy whose name's escaping me at the moment, that all art aspires to the condition of music.
Yeah. Some very famous person.
some very famous fellow. But the point is there, it's something, one name's got a W, one name's got a P or something.
Walter Pater.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Look at me go.
Should know who that person is, but anyway.
Yeah, but this point of, like, all art aspires to the condition of music, the larger context for that quote is that music is purely abstract. You know, if we're talking about music in absence of lyrics here.
Yeah.
It's purely abstract, and yet it communicates ideas in a very, or it communicates emotion.
Yeah, in a very visceral way.
Yeah. And so when you have these art movements like expressionism, these visual art movements like expressionism, they are literally a search to be able to do the same thing optically.
Yeah.
As music. And so you have this very real, demonstrable attempt of visual art to follow something that is completely natural in music.
Yep.
And in a way, you know, the graphic design stuff that I was doing that same thing. It's about the search for consistent, contextual expressions that tie into your personal context and make you feel a particular way. So I think that's a really well-suited background to come to music through, and I suspect, you know, I haven't dug deep into the literature from the folks in Justice, but I suspect that they probably were bringing a lot of those same ideas into graphic design. I think they fit into that 1% that I'm talking about, of people who really think about emotion in a deep way, in relation to graphic design. And so their transition into music was clearly one that was fairly natural for them. And I'm hoping that is going to translate for me as well. We're going to get this little lightning in a bottle thing.
I do think it's happening. You know, like, just the progress in the last week has demonstrated that we're onto something, or I feel like we're onto something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Justice. So the designers who became musicians, and they've had effectively quite a sustained career at this point, through probably a lot of the ideas that you've just spoken about, thinking about emotion and that kind of stuff. What else about this album makes it compelling for you?
For me personally, or that makes me think it's a compelling album?
Yeah, I mean,
in the large
I think
scale.
that's what we're talking about here. We're not necessarily talking about how it applies to us, though. We do talk about that, but I think we're talking about the broader cultural kind of relevance of the record.
Well, okay, I will answer that question, but I did prepare a little excerpt from a podcast that I was listening to. In fact, we have two excerpts that I've prepared.
Two excerpts.
That are gonna we'll come to the second one in the third part of this, but they're both from the same podcast, a fantastic podcast called Switched on Pop.
Yeah, it's a good podcast. Very good.
Is part of my listening rotation, and has been for quite a while. So I'm gonna, as part of what we're trying to do different things. I'm gonna try for the next few weeks to clip out interesting stuff from podcasts that I hear throughout the week.
Yep.
And throw them in. So this is the first attempt at that. But just while we're still on this topic of naivety and the power of that, I'm just gonna play you this little excerpt.
You're gonna have to play it off that machine.
Oh yeah.
You silly Billy.
I didn't think about that. That would have been an embarrassing faux pas.
Yeah. Soon we'll have an integrated system, but I haven't done it yet.
I thought you were going to say soon we're just going to be speaking French for the whole pod.
That's the one you want.
That's the one I want. There we go.
We had no experience in making music, in engineering, in anything. It's not a punk record because it doesn't sound anything like punk music. But the approach to it, it's like, okay, let's make an album, and without having any clue in this regard, it's one album in a lifetime for us, and it would be impossible to try to remake something like this because so much of it is due to lack of knowledge and freshness. This is all happy accidents, and for example, like when we started making music, of course, we were aware that the music we were making didn't sound as good. And we also knew as music listeners that most of the records we like, they don't sound good in terms of like hi-fi terms, but they sound great because they have style.
So, I think that point of style over the perfectionism of that snare being perfectly snappy, is like I personally can't overstate how important that is to me. Like my favorite albums are all garbage, absolute, as in not the band garbage, though they're quite good.
Yeah.
They're
For me,
all
it's like X.
yeah. They're bad recordings.
One shitty mic in a garage with a punk band.
Yeah.
Recorded in a day.
Or ones that have been done really in like a day.
Like we talked about last week with the Pearl Jam record that was 3 weeks.
Exactly that. Yeah. And you don't have to dig very deep at all to find bands that have recorded whole albums in a day. The Drones spring to mind. They did one over a weekend. They're great. They're awesome.
One day we might have the proficiency to pull something like that off.
Yeah, or just the chutzpah. I don't know that you definitely need.
No, well, I mean, you could say that about the X album. I find that album incredibly compelling. You'd be so tired at the end of that day, though. I'll tell you what.
But you look at other art things again, like tie that into the larger web of context, and you think about like the Dadaists and them staying up for days at a time and doing like automatic writing stuff, where they write until they're exhausted.
Have you played around with automatic writing? It's fun. It's really fun. Brain starts going very silly.
Yeah. I mean, in high school, it was something that we used to do as an exercise in English class, doing like what they were calling shotgun writing, where you're given a prompt and zero time to prepare, and you just got to go.
Yeah, they're fun,
and you're not allowed to stop writing.
There's no prompt here. I actually would love to do it with like sensory deprivation. It'd be very fun to kind of write and be sensory deprived.
Can't you just speak? Can't you speak and record
I guess you could do that. I mean, but then you're putting sound into the world. You know what I mean? It would be...
Fair enough.
That would kind of activate your brain in a weird way. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I think I agree with you, and I agree with what they're saying there, because I tend to agree with that point as well, even though this is something very difficult coming... Like, I swear to God, in the West... perfectionism is kind of built into like the way that particularly new artists perceive what art is, or what proficiency is. Just it doesn't matter what discipline, whether it's art or business or whatever, because of the way that people are presenting themselves in the media and on the internet and on social media. There's this kind of like false belief that everything that an artist does is incredible and perfect.
Yeah.
When 90% of what that artist could be doing is total dog shit, and then you just don't see it. And I think for me that's always been a real struggle to kind of overcome, and part of why we're doing what we're doing in this way. You're effectively trying to unlearn brainwashing. But then when you do have these experiences where you produce something that isn't quite perfect, like one of the first records that I ever made for myself, one of the tracks on that came out of literally a 30-minute writing session, and the kind of the seed for that song was all just really shitty vocals recorded on a 57 and instruments that I had in the room that put this kind of beautiful cinematic kind of thing together that is one of my most favorite pieces that I've ever written. And it came out of imperfection and is imperfect in a traditional, like in the way that I think of perfection.
Yeah. Yeah, you can point to parts about the recording that are not ideal.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say that about this Justice album. There's definitely components, and when they were talking about their process about kind of bouncing it down and re-importing it and bouncing it down and re-importing it to get this this vibe around the sampling, of the old record, the sample culture kind of sound. That every single time they do that would kind of add imperfections, and I would. For me, I freak out when I do that kind of stuff, or when that happens, because it's like, well, what if we need to change that sound? It's all it's all a what if, because we're so used to having all the tools on hand all the time these days.
That's where the discipline comes in, right? So you hear about artists like Courtney Barnett talk about, you get three goes at a vocal take, and that's it.
Yeah.
After that, you're now in the territory of it being. You're now chasing perfection.
Yeah.
So, what's the point? It's not going to help you at that point.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that again, that is part of they're walking this fine line. Part of what's compelling to me about this is that they're walking this extremely fine line between doing things like that are highly contrived. They're making these choices deliberately to achieve an aesthetic.
Yep.
That is, and it's not like a naturally occurring to use words that are not necessarily the best ones to use. It's not this path of least resistance or natural part of how they're making music, but it's so it's also on the flip side, it is completely it's completely natural because it's giving the right sort of tonal stuff.
Yeah.
And it is just part of the instruments that they're using, if it's computers, if it's little sampling machines and whatever.
Yeah.
It's a normal consequence of the use of those things, but it's being done in a very artificial way.
Yeah.
And I love the kind of the push and pull between those two ideas and the contrast there. Because they haven't hidden it away. They're being quite open about it. It's not like, oh well, this is just the album that you got and whatever. They're clearly happy to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And this understanding that is designed. That there's this deliberate movement toward these particular things that have cultural relevance, that have meaning to the people who listen to them, that sit either in contrast or in concert with other work in the field that they're working in. I so obviously get behind the fact that they're talking about it in that way, and making it feel more like the blue collar pursuit that art is. You are mining,
Every day.
And so I love that part about it. I feel like I can hear all those qualities when I'm listening to the record.
I can get behind that, and I think it's more compelling because of I
agree.
It's a much more compelling record after listening to them talk about it than it may have necessarily been when I first like
Yeah.
when we were first talking about it. So, just on a more shallow question, like, what did you have a favorite track on the record at all, or was it kind of like if you were to pick one place to start for someone who's never listened to Justice and is not is not a whole album person?
Jeez. Well, you're asking the wrong person.
I know,
because
'cause
I am the ultimate album person.
Yeah.
You know. To the extent where a lot of times I don't even know the names of tracks.
Yeah.
I know the names of albums really well.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where it stops for me, because I almost always listen to an album as a whole body of work.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I'll answer that question. It was Incognito. That was really the track that stood out for me. That was the one that ended up on my liked songs in Spotify. It's not the one that's been the most streamed one. That's one of the Tame Impala ones. But Incognito for me was just amazing. There's so much contrast in there.
There's also a lot of subtlety in there that I think that you pick up on.
Yeah.
Because you're attuned to listening to production choices that for a lot of people it would wash over them.
Mm-hmm.
They'd still feel things.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be precise in the way that it's precise when you listen to it.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe I'll ask a different question. You've been with Justice for a long time. Like, if you were to put this album on a level of proficiency with the rest of their work,
Oh, okay.
where would you put it?
I mean, I think it is their most like in terms of displaying that, like the mastery of their craft.
Yeah.
This is the one.
Yeah.
Like it's the best work they've done as far as I'm concerned. However,
Yes.
that first album,
Cross or whatever it's called.
well, it's just because it's a symbol. Like it's just I think
It's just a cross.
on
T.
on
A little T.
a little T.
A little T.
But I think on Spotify it's just called Justice.
It's called Justice, but the anniversary edition is actually got the symbol. Yeah.
That's cute. But yeah, so Cross.
Cross.
I mean, it's just it is really singular.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we're talking about proficiency beyond music, when we're talking about proficiency of understanding like a cultural context that you're creating art in and putting something new in that's going to send ripples through it like a stone in a pond.
Yep.
That first album, they're never going to have the conditions again to be able to make that and make it land the way that it did.
Yeah.
I think that they in that first album they're displaying proficiency of a different kind.
Yeah.
That is, now the fact that they are a known, understood, reviewed band that's played live, done all this other stuff.
Sustainable band.
They're not. They don't have access to they've got access to a different palette of those cultural options.
Yeah. Would you say legacy artists? That would be a word for them, maybe?
I mean, they've been around for like 20 years.
I'd say
so
that's legacy.
They're kind of a legacy act, yeah. Even though they're still producing
new stuff, yeah. But I mean, they've been around for a while. They've been around.
They have a legacy.
Yeah.
That's undoubted, beyond doubt.
Yeah.
They've been influential. So it's just different.
Yeah.
The proficiency that they displayed in creating something that was fresh and new and vibrant and whatever with that first album is unmatchable. But the music is better in this album,
Yeah.
So yeah, different kinds of proficiency.
All right. Do you have any more final comments on this?
I think we've spoken about it enough. I think naivety can be a superpower.
Yeah.
And I don't say that just to, toot my own horn and
I tend to agree.
Be happy about.
I think the discovery components of the thing, and figuring stuff out, even though it does take time, can be really compelling when you listen to the result of said exploration.
Yeah. And when there's a curiosity, right? If you can talk about that, then even if something's bad, you're listening to music and going, well, this is quite poor. but there's a story to be told about the way it was made or the concept that you were driving at.
Or the threads it was pulling on. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that's done in a
Weaving.
compelling,
Mm.
interesting, clever way that people can wrap their, their brains around,
Yeah.
then that's amazing in a different way.
Yeah.
Like when we were driving around yesterday, and I was playing you stuff from the streets that you'd never heard before. Like that there's songs in that first album that are so like atonal.
Yeah.
That they could be unlistenable. But then you hear stories like, he did the beat sequencing on this like free CD that you could get for a PlayStation 1 in like a in a cereal box.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, well, actually, like that's a really interesting application of those ideas.
Which one was the one that didn't? What's his name? Friggin' Flume. He got his.
Yeah, that was same idea. Like he started in a similar way.
Yeah. Got his door out of a cereal box.
Good old cornflakes coming through again.
What was the door? Was it FL?
I've got no idea.
I don't know what it was. Whatever it was, he got it out of a cereal box.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah. Cool.
Look at him now.
Look at him.
So anyway, I guess we'll go to intermission 2 then.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us for our second component of the weekly chat. I'm Josh, this is Simon. You were listening to the Frights band chat. We'll be back after a short intermission to talk about the big discussion topic for the week, which is
going to be trying to quantify the idea of the never-ending sleepover, which is a concept that we'll keep coming back to over and over because it's kind of the underpinning thought,
Vibe.
thread, whatever,
Yeah.
that underpins all the music we'll be making and the content as well.
Yeah, as part of Frights. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right.
So yeah, we might have to start wearing pajamas at some point.
Oh yeah. Back in a sec. Oh, that was good. And we're back.
Smooth like caramel.
Welcome back to the FRIGHTS weekly discussion with me, Josh, and Simon, talking about how the band is progressing, what we've been doing, and all manner of different subjects. We've already talked about our our progress for the week and how we've been feeling about things, and we just had a cultural discussion around Justice and their new album Hyperdrama, which was fun.
That's true. That is what it's called.
And now we're going to get into the final component of our weekly chat, which is the big discussion. And the big discussion this week is about an idea which has kind of come up in the development of the band, really, and the pre-band kind of development, I guess, before the band was a thing,
Before it was a glimmer in its mother's eye.
Yeah, which is this concept of the Never Ending Sleepover and what that actually means. And I kind of suggested this as something to talk about because we are producing a little bit of content around this and some playlists and demonstrations, I guess, in like how we each individually see this.
Yeah, as much as to get it clear in our heads as to,
that's what I'm getting to. It's like I don't know what this means. Like I kind of know, it makes sense to you, and I think it makes sense to Matt. But I think it makes sense to me in a very different way, and it's kind of a cool thing to talk about. Yeah, because it definitely fits as this core idea around the band. Another night theme: ghosts, Friday night lights, fucking whatever this is, sleepovers. Fucking.
Wow.
Calm down. Put it back.
Sometimes a morning thing.
Bring it back.
Um,
I will not comment. Do you want to take us into this one, Simon?
Sure. Well, I think in the spirit of just pulling off the Band-Aid, we might just jump in with our second excerpt and let Chapel Roan take us in to this subject. So this is when we started talking about this, just happened to coincide with a few different things, but I was listening back to some episodes that I'd earmarked of that same podcast to re-listen to. And so imagine my surprise when this one from 2023 that I'd listened to at the time, but just this little part of it hadn't stuck in my head. So this came up again, and it was exactly the kind of a description of the kind of vibe that I feel captures Never Ending Sleepover Energy. So here we go.
I say slumber party pop because it feels like that.
I like that.
It's like it's more than bedroom pop. Not that it's more, but it's not as chill as bedroom pop.
Yeah.
But it still feels like fun with all your girlies, and you dance around and like do makeup and play dress up or play video games, whatever. And then at the end of the night, there's always that girl that like cries, and then everyone starts crying.
So hanging out with all your girlies is part of it, but the feelings of it, like being this time where you can experiment and try things and embrace change, embrace inevitable change, because it's part of having these sort of sleepovers, is part of growing up.
Yep.
Yeah, and figuring out your identity and trying, like, expanding your minds as well. Like an iconic part for me of sleepovers growing up were these just far-ranging, silly discussions that help you understand where you fit in the world. They come out of a place of being naive and immature and not really understanding, but you find those limits, and that's where your identity comes from.
Yeah.
So the idea of seriousness and silliness and nostalgia and those ideas of it being really fun, but then someone ends up crying because they've flown too close to the sun. They've mined their emotional depths a little too hard.
Yep.
That stuff typifies the Never Ending Sleepover energy, I think.
Yeah.
That there's almost like a tabooness to it without it actually being a taboo.
Yeah.
The taboo comes from things like, oh, we stayed up all night. You know, oh, we had cereal for dinner.
Yeah.
You know,
Yummy.
it's like low stakes taboos. And I love that stuff. I feel like it's so singular, and we have an opportunity to be playing around with those ideas. So I find it really heartening that, especially given the start to the year that Chapel Roan has had in their career, you know, the idea that this was what was being spoken about in like mid to late 2013 is great. You know, so reassuring to me that we are going. It's one of these great indicators of we're going down the right path.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, it's like if no one else was doing it, then it would be this kind of is this the right thing to be doing? If everyone was doing it, it was, well, there's too much competition. And it feels like there's this gap, there's this space where this type of we can plumb and mine this kind of territory without it being redundant because everyone's already done it. But you know, without it being so in the unknown that it's just, you know, how do we even know if we're doing a good job?
Yeah.
And so you can, that in that same podcast, that same discussion, they went on to talk about all these incredible little references and things that Chapel Roan's built into their music. So things like sing-along chant type moments. In one track, there's a spelt section. She spells out "hot to go," and talks about that as being
It's a hot chip thing too.
But talks about that as being a throwback to a Village People thing, like wanting to be that idea of spelling out. We're going to spell out a word. We're going to have a dance that goes along with it. Yeah, it was her Village People moment. Yeah. And so you think about, well, of course that ties back to if you're someone who grew up in like the 90s or 2000s or maybe even the 80s, like that's part of your childhood. Yeah. Is dancing the YMCA. Yeah. You do it as part of like school. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it still happens today.
I'm sure it does, but it's so
ultimately this idea is kind of about growth for you, but in a very like a young way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's about like the joy of not having stakes. You know, there's like,
and that I mean that's kind of where FNL came from in the first place. The concept behind that writing session, the soon to be renamed Friday Night Lights, was about not worrying about the future of the music that we were producing. Yeah. It's a very different scenario now, but one of the things that we're trying to kind of maintain in that session is that effectively naivety, the no stakes kind of angle. Yeah. To improve our ability to kind of like cross over to that creative side of ourselves, you know. So it's interesting that idea, and of course we always did it on a Friday night. When we first started, we'd all worked quite hectic weeks. At that point, a lot of the people coming to the segment had also, the session had also worked pretty hectic weeks. Everyone was really tired. It kind of fit 20 song game idea that's in that book there, the Frustrated Songwriter's Handbook, where you effectively just write for as long as you can, as many songs as you can. 20 songs in a day is the kind of the idea. And you're so tired by the end of it that you just stop thinking about the decisions you're making and you just do it. You know, that thing that Nike keeps, you know, their kind of little slogan, they got it right, you know, just do it. It's very much that energy. And so when you talk about it being this kind of growth thing, it very much kind of paints a picture of how that session works, you know. The fact that it happens at night, the fact that it often goes into the wee hours of the morning, the fact that people don't tend to, the fact that sometimes people don't tend to leave until 2 a.m. or later. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all part of it.
It's all part of it, you know, and we're making a deliberate change in that respect, so that we can play with the session a bit more in the near future. but yeah, I feel like that session in particular lives up to the idea of the never-ending sleepover for sure. And I think the music that comes out of it kind of speaks to that as well, because they're definitely very varied. I mean, obviously that depends on who was producing on the day, who came to the session, blah, 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 blah. Because in the past we've run it as kind of a community thing where it's been like where we've invited particular people or whatever. So there's always been a different group of people. So you ended up with these really cool and varied results. And I think that will continue even if we reduced it, because we've kind of set up that precedence, I guess, that process. For me, just as you were talking then, I was thinking about what it actually means to me, and I'd been thinking about this for a couple of days, knowing that we'd probably end up talking about it on this chat, during this chat. For me, I think my favourite time to make stuff is in the middle of the night. It always has been.
Me too.
And I mean, we talked about this earlier in the week where I've been keeping the studio lights just on those like festoon lights, where everything is dark and shaded and shadowed and muted, you know, like there's only a fireplace in the room kind of thing. Low light conditions, like it kind of shuts off the world for me. And so like the Never Ending Sleepover is kind of like coming at it from a different angle, is where the whole world is asleep and I'm kind of witnessing that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the witnessing of it is just quiet, you know, space, no psychic energy bouncing around, you know, where a place where I can really consolidate my thoughts and make something that kind of speaks to the world when it's awake. You know what I mean? So
were you like the last one asleep at sleepovers, or you like, did you drop off early?
I never really went to sleep during those things.
You just stayed up?
Just stayed up. I was the one who was watching the sunrise in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then proceeding to sleep for the rest of the day while they all went and broke arms and blew up firecrackers and shit. I did plenty of that too, but that usually happened before the sleepover.
Yeah.
Crashing quad bikes and
Yeah. So you got in on part A of the mischief.
landing in cat heads.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, I got into the mischief before and then reflected upon those stupid decisions over the night. But for me, definitely at the moment, just in my general creative practice, the silence in the world between 1 and 4 a.m. is like
it's magical.
a magical time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being able
capturing that magic sonically
is awesome.
Yeah.
And that's
achievable.
what this kind of idea means to me.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So I think Matt will have a certain idea around this, and I'd love to hear his thoughts. So it's definitely something we'll return to. But yeah, that's kind of, you know, it's definitely something that we've spoken about regularly around the idea of frights and what music we're producing. And certainly one of the tracks, which is almost finished, has those values in it, where it's quite nostalgic and reflective and dreamlike. And
I think part of the reason that particular track works as well as it does is because it came around the same time as we were developing. We were dancing around this idea of understanding what this is going to be. Those little connections were just starting to form up when that track was made, and it was made really quickly. Kind of, I feel like, as a result. Yeah,
and it's not, you know, it's a short track too.
Relatively quickly.
Yeah, and it was it was made relatively quickly. The like 80% of the track was made during one of those writing sessions.
How many hours?
Well, how many hours? Actually, I would say probably no more than 12 hours, maybe 15.
You reckon no more than 12 hours has gone into that whole...
Not so nostalgic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was quick.
Wow.
Like the original...
I wonder what Matt would say.
I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah.
Like, just from my perspective, I know that he didn't work ridiculously on it. He may have done 2 like hour or 2 sessions here. There was another one where we did some vocal pickups and then just some final touch-ups.
Okay.
So maybe 12 to 15 hours so far, and I've got to mix it yet, so it hasn't been mixed.
Okay, so and that'll add what?
5, 6. Depends. It doesn't need much mixing, to be honest. It's just going to be a final zhuzh.
What are the consequences of not mixing and mastering a track? Are there any? Doesn't it get automatically mixed? Not mixed, not automatically mastered.
Well, not really. Mastering is a lot of compression and stuff too. The algorithms don't touch compression mostly nowadays. It's just normal, which is just
volume adjustment.
Volume adjustment, yeah. But if you don't master something, you kind of can miss out on some of the sparkle. It kind of brings it all together a bit more than what the mix would. The other main part is that it brings it up to the spec of the release platform. That's what mastering it was initially for.
Mm-hmm.
A mix engineer wouldn't be thinking about if it's going on a record or a CD or a tape, because obviously a record and a cassette tape, they have different standards. That's what mastering kind of existed for before. It's kind of null and void now to a degree with...
I think we had a little dropout there.
Fun.
Anyway. Having this particular sound that had come from some of the processes they were doing, like putting things onto tape and then pulling them off tape. I think, no, it was mini disc. They were putting things onto mini discs and then pulling it stuff, and then pulling it off, and that would have a certain artifacting and digital glimmer to it,
which it does.
And then they took it to either a mix engineer or a mastering engineer. I don't know. I'm telling the story very poorly.
That's all right.
Who then said, like, this is, you can't be having these sounds on the thing, like that we want to work to eliminate those. And then of course they went, no, that's part of our aesthetic. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like you can't get rid of them. We've worked hard to put them in.
Yeah.
And I imagine that must happen to mix engineers constantly, or would it just be beaten out of them eventually, where they just go, well, I trust that the artist knows the sound they're going for, and I'm here to just...
It takes time. I've definitely gone through that metamorphosis as a mix engineer myself. Like, speak to this a lot because me and him have had lots of conflicts over the years around mixing and what that does to music. It's kind of got to the point where I actually think it goes back to that idea of perfection. Imperfect mixes are actually much more interesting than not, you know.
So should you always have a naive mix engineer?
Well, you know, we've talked about this in relation to one of the younger people who we've worked with, and her mixing ability is, I think it's incredible. It's very interesting what she produces, it does come from that place of naivety, which is, I think, part of it. But it comes from a place of really good taste as well. You know, not knowing the tools is not a bad thing, but like not having taste is a very bad thing, I think. And like I think that's probably more to the point than, say, the technical ability. And because I came from a technical background, I learnt mixing the technical way.
Not going to talk about your taste.
No. Well, whatever. Thank you. Whereas, like, and that was always
pretty good.
That was always the conflict between me and Matt. Was in the
6 out
early
of 10.
days. 6 out of 10. Thank you. Was the, you know, he came at music from a very spiritual place, and a vibe place, whereas I came to it from a technical place. And mixing for me in the early days was always a really technical application, whereas it isn't now. Mixing for me is as creative as the creation process, and it's just about clarity for me, clarity of vision. It's not just clarity of the music; it's clarity of the vision, what that looks like, what that is, and goes to the points of what we talked about in the past about threads, you know.
Yeah. So it's more of that emotional palette stuff that I was talking about, like.
Which is very much wrapped up in this idea of the way that you think about the Never Ending Sleepover, where it's an idea of growth and getting into the weeds in weird discussions and things like that, where it's we do figure that stuff out, you know. And for us, because we have all the skills on hand to do that, my kind of impulse around the mixing component is to kind of be as light touch as possible, because we've already kind of put what we need sonically into the product that we're producing. We don't need to be stuff-assing around with technical stuff. We don't need to be making it perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about the idea, the energy, the vibe of the track, you know, the intention. You know, so
So centering that sort of stuff, doing that kind of human-centered design approach to music, would like it feels to me like you get the opportunity to maybe do more of that stuff in the mix than you do.
Oh, I don't know. There's a real, particularly where I sit now with mixes and the whole process, really, the holistic thoughts that I have around the process of making music and releasing music is I don't know if you can necessarily separate them from one another.
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting to think about it in contrast to something like film, right? Where have you heard this phrase before of a film gets made 3 times? Once in the writing, once in the shooting, and once in the edit?
Yeah. The edit, I think for film, the edit, it's been demonstrated so many times, particularly with director's cut and things like that.